Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Ayşe Süberker. Long known for its sunny beaches and warm climate, the Eastern Mediterranean is better known as a vacation destination than a geopolitical hotspot. But that's changed in recent years with the discovery of vast energy resources beneath the seabed. A string of countries have laid claim to the wealth, sparking a series of maritime disputes that could fire up at a moment's notice. Haydar Abbasi explains.
Surveying the sea. This Turkish ship is exploring the Eastern Mediterranean. Named after a famous Ottoman admiral, the Orange Race is conducting seismic research, but it must navigate troubled waters. The discovery of oil and gas in the region has led to major disputes.
We will continue our seismic research and drilling activities and issue licenses along the western borders of our continental shelf by the end of August. We will defend to the fullest the rights of both Turkey and Turkish Cypriots in the Eastern Mediterranean, and we will not compromise.
Greece will defend its sovereignty and its rights. We are calling on Turkey to immediately leave the Greek continental shelf.
One of the main disagreements is between Turkey and Greece and their links to the island nation of Cyprus. The waters surrounding Cyprus contain large reserves of natural gas. But there's a problem. The island is divided into Greek-administered Cyprus and a Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. It's been split since 1974. However, Turkey is the only country in the world that recognizes the republic. Since the discovery, Greek-administered Cyprus has signed energy deals with Israel, Lebanon, and Egypt. Turkey doesn't recognize these agreements because it says the island is disputed territory. Ankara says the resources should be shared by all Cypriots and last year began exploration in the Eastern Mediterranean. In November, Turkey and Libya established an exclusive economic zone. It allows for the exploration and exploitation of resources. The area stretches from Turkey's southern coast to Libya's northeast coast. Egypt has condemned the agreement as illegal, while Athens says it infringes on Greek waters. Earlier this month, Greece and Egypt signed a maritime deal, which they say nullifies Turkey's agreement with Libya. This has angered Ankara, and in response, the Orange Race has been deployed to waters near Greek-administered Cyprus. Despite the tensions, Turkey says it's willing to settle all issues through talks.
Doğu Akdeniz'de çözümün yolu diyalog ve müzakeredir. Sağduyu ve aklı selimle hareket edilirse herkesin hakkını koruyan kazan temelli bir formül bulunabilir. Biz asla gereksiz macera peşinde değiliz, gerilimde aramıyoruz.
According to the research group Wood Mackenzie, the Eastern Mediterranean holds almost 2 trillion cubic meters of gas, resources with the capacity to transform entire economies. Haydar Abbasi, Straight Talk.
And to break it all down, joining me now from Turkey's western city of Çanakkale is Suha Cubukcuoglu. He is a member of the advisory board at Koç University's Maritime Forum. And in Istanbul, we have John Bowlus. He is the editor-in-chief of Energy Reporters and a researcher at the Center for Energy and Sustainable Development at Kadir Has University. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. So we have seen tensions rise since Turkey started exploration activities in the Eastern Mediterranean. But just this past week, a mini collision between Turkish and Greek warships occurred, which raised alarms in both capitals. John, could you walk us through the latest flare-up? Is it different this time? Is there a risk of a military clash between the sides?
Well, I mean, if we, in some senses, this is kind of business as usual. I mean, we've seen this kind of these flare-ups, particularly in 2018, they occurred, and we've seen them kind of steadily since. I think what's the primary difference that's changed is the battlefield in Libya. So much of kind of the Eastern Mediterranean gas question is interconnected, I would say, to what's happening in Libya and as well as other parts of the region. So there's much more of a chance for what is already a hot war in Libya to spill over into the Mediterranean Sea at this point.
So the regional power struggles that rose in Libya are now shifting into the sea, which is the Eastern Mediterranean. So, Suha, according to Turkey's Navtex, seismic research will continue until the 23rd of August. What will happen after that date?
So I think tensions will continue to build up from now and until then. But I don't see, in frank, honest terms, that the war is likely or a break of hostilities is likely between Turkey and Greece. I think, Turkey may continue its seismic activities either to the west of the area that it's currently searching on, closer to the Greek islands. And Greece has declared its opposition to these kind of maneuvers, but so far we have not seen any serious escalation. And I don't think that this is going to be the case. This is a long-term, struggle, if I may call it that way. Because what essentially Greece tries to do is to win over Turkey without fighting the war, in sort of the Sun Tzu's famous phrase that the best way to win over your enemy is without fighting the war.
Is it
So
possible?
that's what it's trying to do.
Is it possible?
Well, so far, Greece has been successful in building a coalition of, partners around the region. In that respect, it's successful. But in armed conflict, it wouldn't prevail over Turkey because Turkey has escalation dominance in the Eastern Mediterranean. Remember, because it's a far off field from Greek mainland,
yes,
especially Cyprus, and so we wouldn't see Greece taking a head-on collision with Turkey in that zone. If it was the Aegean, we could be, looking at different scenarios because it's scattered with Aegean islands all over the geography there. But Mediterranean has a different theater, so I wouldn't think that Greece would take such a risk.
John, Turkish Foreign Minister Cavusoglu has recently said Turkey's Libya deal would give Egypt an additional 50,000 square kilometers in the Eastern Mediterranean. Why did Egypt sign this deal at the expense of its maritime borders as well as its continental shelf?
Well, I mean, I have to say that almost all of these deals are somewhat political. Actually getting more acreage of exploration for Egypt is not something that they necessarily need. Egypt is already, it has the richest reserves in the region of gas. And so I think this political symbolic, as Suha was talking about, the coalition building aspect of the deal is more important to focus on.
Well, we know that since the 1820s, the region has never seen a Greek-Egyptian military alliance against Turkey. So now that the question is whether these two countries will act jointly or separately against Turkey. Earlier today, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan spoke about Egypt, and he said the two countries' intels were in touch. Let's listen to what he had to say, then we'll continue to talk.
Tabii bu konuda ben Mısır'ı anlamakta da zorlanıyorum doğrusu.
I have difficulty in understanding Egypt in this regard because Egypt, on the one side, through the intelligence agency, is telling me other things to my intelligence agency. Is telling us that there are misunderstandings and saying that we should fix these misunderstandings. And our intelligence agency is having talks with their intelligence agency and will continue talking.
So, Suha, is there a possibility of rapprochement between Cairo and Ankara?
There is a pie on the table. So if both countries look at expanding this pie and, equitably sharing it, there is always a chance to give to diplomacy and to achieve a mutually beneficial outcome between the two parties. We're not at war with Egypt. We don't have territorial disputes with them. We don't have historic enmities like we do with some other countries. So why not? This is always a possibility. I mean, diplomacy never ends, to try to mend the ties between even two adversaries. So I would see that, yes, this is all in likelihood there is possibility, but that possibility is dim at the moment because of the coalition partners, as I mentioned before, surrounding Egypt, Greece, and recently, as we heard on the news today, that Israel and the UAE decided to mend their ties and normalize relations.
Yes.
This has wider implications in the region.
Yeah, in support of Greece, France has also stepped up its military presence in the region. So, John, it sought closer relations with Russia earlier. It called NATO brain dead. Now, France is calling on NATO to build up deterrence against Turkey. What's at stake for France, and what's your take on Macron's animosity against Turkey?
Well, again, Libya is causing a major flashpoint between the two countries who are backing opposite sides of the war there. France, I think you have to always look at domestic calculations. Macron's poll numbers are not, they've been kind of in the high 30s for months, if that. He's looking to score points, as Western leaders often do, abroad to shore up his political standing. And I'd add that there is, a bit of a power vacuum in Europe with Britain leaving the EU. Germany, of course, is trying to negotiate between Greece and Turkey this week, whereas France is kind of pushing NATO and the alliance in a different direction, one more full of animosity, as you said. So, there's that kind of competition as well going on, I think, here.
So how will this latest escalation impact NATO?
People have been guessing that NATO's demise it could come any time. It is a rather sturdy alliance. It still has kind of the Russian threat as its main raison d'etre. So, I don't see a major break coming from this. I do share general optimism that this will, de-escalate, and the parties will come to a new kind of modus operandi that, doesn't bring war.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you very much for joining us on Straight Talk. Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
It was a revelation many had long suspected, but was never acknowledged by American officials. Late last year, the U.S. had partially withdrawn its forces from northern Syria, but Washington said it would keep a residual force there to secure Syria's oil reserves. Late last month, during a congressional hearing, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo confirmed that a deal had been struck to develop oil infrastructure in areas controlled by the PKK-linked YPG terror group. Turkey's foreign ministry was quick to condemn the move, saying U.S. support disregards international law and violates the territorial integrity of Syria. Ankara also said it falls within the scope of financing terrorism. Turkey has launched 3 military operations against the YPG in northern Syria since 2016. They were in response to cross-border attacks and to ensure the terror group did not consolidate its control over large swaths of northeastern Syria, where most of its oil fields are located. Most of the country's oil production have been offline since 2011, when conflict first broke out. Before then, Syria had produced around 380,000 barrels of crude per day. And to discuss what this could mean for Syria and ties between Washington and Ankara, I'm joined by Marwan Kabalan. He is the Director of Policy Analysis at the Arab Center for Research and Policy Studies in Doha. And here in Istanbul, we have Mehmet Celik, the Managing Editor of the English language daily Sabah newspaper. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. So, Marwan, has this agreement come as a surprise?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, for many of us, actually, we have been expecting the Americans to take further measures or further steps, in fact, to strengthen the position of the Syrian Democratic Forces, that is the SDF. The United States actually decided to keep some troops in the first place in the region in order to protect the oil fields, the Syrian oil fields in the east and northeast. And we know that President Trump has said at least twice that he wanted the United States actually, or companies, U.S. companies, to help the Kurds actually have the oil revenue instead of having the United States paying them. Because, as you know, the United States president actually is mainly concerned about what the United States is spending here and there.
Yes.
So it wasn't really a surprise for many of us.
So besides modernizing oil fields and generating an income for the locals, as the United States claims, Mehmet, what are the ulterior motives behind this deal? And what do you make of the names running this energy company?
Well, first of all, I think that the whole deal itself is problematic for several reasons. First of all, it legitimizes taking over the Syrian people's energy resources through an entity that has been, on the list of terror organizations by the United States and the European Union, as well as Turkey. I mean, we are talking about SDF, but ultimately this is YPG, which is nothing different than the PKK terrorist organization. So the Syrian oil is, in a way, being stolen through a terrorist organization without the approval of the Syrian people as a whole, as a population. Or regardless of this regime in place, this is without the approval of Syria as a territorial entity present on those lands. So it is problematic in that sense, but ultimately it also legitimizes PKK, which is, YPG, which is nothing different than, like we said, the PKK, as an actor on the field, which the U.S. itself has been partnering with, in the name of fighting Daesh.
Yes.
So of course, this is problematic for Turkey, and this the company that has been making this deal is run by some of the former generals and some of the former political actors per se. So in a way, this is through a private company, but we have to dig deeper into who is running the company.
Yes, for example, James Rees, one of the partners and former officer in the Army's elite Delta Force, he said during a Fox interview in 2016, quote, "We own the whole eastern parts of Syria, that is ours, and cannot give that up." So how is this possible?
Who is he? We have secured the oil phrase that has been infamous by Trump. We have secured the oil. Whose oil is being secured? In the name of whom? This is a very problematic situation with regards to U.S. motive, U.S. interests in the field. Of course, the U.S. is not there, as it has been claiming for the Syrians, or even for the Syrian Kurds, as they have been partnering with a terrorist organization. The U.S. interests are not necessarily, they're not concerned about the Kurds as a population there, or the locals as the Syrian people. Of course, we have to look at the long-term and mid-term and long-term U.S. interests with regard to energy, with regards to geopolitics in the region. And this unfolding is nothing, it doesn't come to me as a surprise that the U.S. is making a deal with the YPG to secure the oil, because why else would the U.S. be in Syria?
Yes.
Why else would they care about the Syrian people? I don't think democracy and human rights is part of their long-term interests.
Yes. So, Marwan, will this lead the Syrian Kurds acquiring a semi-independent administration similar that of the Kurdish autonomous region in northern Iraq? And what kind of political ramifications it will have on the region, per se, from a Russian or Iranian perspective?
Well, I think the fears are real, actually. Many Syrians fear that this step by the United States might be actually leading to dividing Syria. We believe that if the Kurds, actually, the YPG and the YPD, both actually, as Mehmet said, are the Syrian branch of the PKK, are becoming dependent in terms of their economic dependence, their economic having their own economic revenues. That might lead actually to, this is what we fear actually, to dividing Syria. The Americans are saying that they are doing that actually as a bargaining chip in order to force the Syrian regime to accept Resolution 2254, which leads to a political solution to the Syrian crisis. But on the other hand, we believe also that the Americans are using that as a bargaining chips against the Iranians, because they don't want actually the Iranians to establish a so-called corridor, a Shiite corridor from Iran, Iraq, Syria, along the way to the Mediterranean, to Lebanon. And also,
yes.
The Americans also maybe are using this as a bargaining chip against Turkey itself. This is what we also believe, because we know that while the Americans are having certain agreements with Turkey on certain issues, for example, they are actually having disagreements on other issues. We know that the Americans are, to an extent, siding with Greece against Turkey concerning the East Mediterranean gas exploration. We know the Americans are actually siding with Turkey in Libya. So there are differences, there are agreements, there are disagreements between Turkey and the United States. But overall, we believe that also the Americans, because from the very beginning, Turkey actually offered the Americans to help in the war against ISIL. The Americans, they decided actually to go and support the YPG instead.
All right,
so this is something.
It brings us to the point.
That was,
Mehmet, so what are Turkey's options? I mean, how will it act on the ground? Will Ankara expand on its Peace Spring operation area? Will it choose diplomatic channels? Is there an opportunity that Turkish and Syrian intels cooperate on this matter? What's your take on that?
Well, Turkey has always favored diplomacy over hardcore presence in Syria. And when that fails, Turkey launches its own operations when it's left with no choice but to actually be on the ground and put the boots on the ground, as it did on the Euphrates Shield and the Olive Branch. But I think what's important here is we need to understand how this will unfold for Turkey as a bargaining chip between the United States and Russia, because as we know, both United States and Russia is not, they don't have a secret agenda with the YPG. They are both in some sort of cooperation with the YPG. So how this will unfold for Turkey in its relations with the United States and its relations with Russia, I think it's something that we need to look at, because right now, United States has taken a step forward in its relations, and it has cemented its relationship with the YPG through this oil. How Russia will play by taking Turkey on its side, whether Russia will put a certain distance now between itself and YPG, will also depend on its relationship with Turkey and how Turkey is planning to act on the field, because Turkey has some red lines, and the establishing a YPG entity, a terrorist corridor in northern Syria, is a red line that Turkey is not going to negotiate with any of the partners or actors on the field.
Yeah. So although no harsh reaction from Moscow, Marwan, how do you think this will affect Assad regime's alliance with Tehran, which are under US sanctions?
Well, of course, I think I believe that the Russians are not really happy with this agreement in the first place. One must say, because the Russians, they don't want also to pay any sort of economic aid to the Syrian regime. They want the Syrian regime at the end of the day to have its own independence concerning energy and financial resources. So the Russians are clearly not happy with that agreement. But on the other hand, the Russians are trying to exploit every single issue here that might actually force the Americans somehow out of the region, because they don't want that is the main concern of the Russians in Syria. They want the Americans out of Syria, and they have actually relying to a certain extent with Turkey in order to help them with that. So I think they just took the opportunity immediately after the agreement, which led actually to the withdrawal of the US troops from the borders between Syria and Turkey last fall, and that led, as you know, to the initiation of the Operation Peace Fountain by Turkey.
Yes.
So I think the Russians here are trying to use and exploit every single sword that help them actually push on the one hand the Americans out, and also divide all the other parties in between them on the other hand.
All
so
right.
After all, I think that the Russians will be trying also to bring the Kurds actually to their own side, because they think now the Americans are boosting their relationship with the Kurds, and this is something the Russians actually they don't like. They want the Kurds to be on the side of the regime.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining us on Straight Talk. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Ayşe Süberker. If you've got any comments, follow us and tweet us at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and goodbye.